Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. Tonight, we set the time machine back to 1973 to revisit two classic rock masterpieces. Some say they're prog rock, of course they are, but just classic rock masterpieces, rock and roll masterpieces that are celebrating 50th anniversaries in the year 2023. Emerson, Lake and Palmer with brain salad surgery. And also tonight we're going to discuss the mighty Pink Floyd with one of the most iconic records ever, Dark Side of the Moon. Here's a little bit about each album. Hope I don't bore you because I took some notes down that I found. Brain Salad Surgery is the fourth studio album by the English progressive rock band Emerson, Lake and Palmer, released on November 19th, 1973 by their record label, Manticore Records, and distributed by Atlantic. Following the tour in support of the previous album trilogy, that group acquired rehearsal facilities to work on the new material, which would blend classical and rock themes. To control things, they launched their own record company, Manticore, in March 73. The album was recorded from June to September at Olympic and Ad Vision Studios and mixed in October 73 at AIR Studios in London. As were the group's previous work, it was produced by Greg Lake. The album includes a cover designed by H.R. Geiger. Released to a mixed critical response, it received more favorable reviews since the release. Brain Salad Surgery continued the group's commercial success, reaching #2 in the United Kingdom and #11 in the United States, and eventually gaining gold certifications in both countries. In its support, the trio embarked on their largest world tour to date, including a headlining spot at the California Jam Festival here in the United States. There's February 2nd concert, which was played at the main arena in Anaheim Convention Center in Anaheim, California, was documented on the 3-disc anthology, Welcome Back, My Friends, to the Show That Never Ends, Ladies and Gentlemen, which was released in August 1974. Much of the performance was used for broadcast American rock music radio show, The King Biscuit Flower Hour. Arguably the most high-profile performance was on April 6, 74, when Emerson, Lake and Palmer co-headlined with Deep Purple the California Jam Festival held at the Ontario Motor Speedway in Ontario, California, with an attendance of 350,000 paying fans. Only 55 minutes of the group's 2.5-hour festival closing set was aired by the ABC television network, which was a sponsor of the festival on 7 May and June 10th, 74. The remaining footage of ELP's entire performance has thus far never surfaced, unlike Deep Purple, whose entire hour set has been issued in various audio and video releases. And that kind of, that California Jam Festival, of course, Black Sabbath was there too. It was just such a great concert, and I thought that was so cool just to talk a little bit about that. Now on to Pink Floyd. The Dark Side of the Moon was the 8th studio album by Pink Floyd, released March 1st, 73 on Harvest Records. Developed during live performance before recording began, it was conceived as a concept album that would focus on the pressures faced by the band during their arduous lifestyle, and also dealt with the mental health problems of former band member Syd Barrett, who departed the group in 1968. The new material was recorded in 2 sessions in 72 and 73 at EMI Studios, now Abbey Road Studios in London. The Dark Side of the Moon explores themes such as conflict, greed, time, death, and mental illness. Snippets from interviews from the band's road crew and others are featured along with philosophical quote. Philosophical, I can't talk tonight, quotations. The sleeve, which depicts a prismatic spectrum, was designed by Storm Thurgeson in response to the keyboard Richard White's request for a simple and bold design that would represent the band's lighting and album themes. The album was promoted with the 2 singles, Money and Us and Them. The Dark Side of the Moon is amongst the most critically acclaimed albums and often featured in professional listings of the greatest albums of all time. It's brought Pink Floyd to international fame, wealth, and plaudits of all 4 members. A blockbuster release of the album era propelled record sales throughout the music industry during the 70s. Dark Side of the Moon was certified 14 times platinum in the United Kingdom and topped the U.S. Billboard top LPs and tape chart, where it had charted for 979 weeks. Can you believe that? Wow. As of 2013, The Dark Side of the Moon has sold over 45 million copies worldwide, making it the best-selling album of the 70s and the 4th best-selling album in history. 2012 was selected for the preservation in the U.S. National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress. And that's my introduction. It's a little long-winded, and I think I couldn't read some of my own writing here, but here we go. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the channel tonight. And now I knocked my light down. I got Rand here from California. Of course, we bring him in for all of our classic episodes. It's always a pleasure to see him. We got Miles Berggren from the South. We got Count Ralphus, our local rock and roll and metal historian. We got David Gallagher, first time ever on the channel. He's hopped over. He does a couple of Pete Pardo's shows on the Sea of Tranquility channel, and he is joining us from Scotland. Where in Scotland are you today?
Glasgow, Scotland, the only place to be.
Okay, we got Tony Dio from North Carolina. I'm going to give you the intro like the pro wrestler now. And we got Ed Farsley from Armageddon Productions. We were expecting a couple other tonight. Maybe they'll pop in, maybe they won't. Denny Barth is playing playoff hockey tonight, so he's going to hop in early, but he may pop in. So we're going to go around and ask each person, if we only had money to buy one of these albums and you were in the record store, whether it's 1973 or 2023, which one are you going to take home with you? I'm going to kick this off with Rand because he's in my top square here, and we'll get his point of view, and then we'll go around the bend.
You gotta be kidding.
You don't want to go first?
No, I'm just laughing because never mind. It's all good. It's all good. What do we? Oh, I see. I got to choose, huh?
Well, you got to tell us about each album, what you like, and what one do you like better. So maybe start off with the one you like least, or trick us. I don't know.
I think I'm going to trick you.
All right, trick us. Then.
You've already told us.
Let me go through my presentation. Let me go through my presentation. Which one was released first? Do you know?
Which one was released first? Didn't I
Pink
say
Floyd.
that? And
Dark Side was early in the year.
March.
I'm 70
Dark
and a half.
Side.
Yeah, ELP was later in the year, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've just had the 50th for Dark Side. So.
All right, good. It starts here, right?
Yeah.
It is a regular Capitol album, nothing special about it. It's got the posters, it's got had a pretty good package with an LP, a gatefold, and all kinds of postcards and 2 posters, one of the band on stage and another one pyramids. The American version had green everything pyramids for the sky green and the ground was green. It looked like a moonscape kind of with pyramids. And the British version, the LP, came out with blue. So if you have both, it's kind of trippy.
Mm-hmm.
I have the American one, so it's green. And so there's that. And then came the Shine On box set, which gave you CD covers like this, plastic. And see that? I don't know if you can see that right on the edge there. No. But if you hook all those, you hook all those together, it makes the pyramid cover of the album, which I didn't want to have to get them and hold them and everything like that because it's kind of a bitch to do it. But the Shine On box set was phenomenal, really cool to have. So there's that, and then there's the 2003 James Guthrie 5.1 mix, which I love the cover of this. It's all blue looking and everything.
Yeah, the super audio, yeah.
Really cool artwork here. I really love the sound of this. It sounds great. And then recently, I decided I wasn't going to get the 50th anniversary box set because I can't afford it. For fixed income. So I went and saw this on Amazon, which is a standalone Blu-ray. I think it's the same mix. It might be newer. I don't know. It's James Guthrie again. 5.1. This is really cool packaging. It's like a booklet, a hardcover book, and it's got like the pictures from the postcards and stuff. That looks pretty cool. You know, that I don't think anybody else is using that artwork. Maybe they did in the immersion box set, but I never saw that. But anyway, there's this big booklet. When I saw him live, this was the touring program at Cal Palace. We actually bought that.
Oh, wow.
It's like a $2 or something.
So you saw the tour?
Yeah. An evening with Pink Floyd at Cal Palace. This is one of the posters that comes with the LP.
Yep.
And then they have a lot of like, this doesn't come with anything. This is like brand new. And then the different lyrics and stuff like that. But then on the very back page, you get the disc and that artwork. The sound of this is phenomenal. I mean, this is 5.1 surround sound test worthy. It's incredible. I heard that the other day when I first got it. I loved it. And one more thing dealing with this album, I'd like to give a shout out to my friend Martin Popoff for writing this book. This thing is unbelievable. Everybody that loves this album should get this. It's so intense. Big, thick book. I mean,
Wow.
I'll just open up to a random page and show you one page. But yeah, he just goes deep dive into this. That's what he described it here. But yeah, it's worth every freaking penny. And of course, he signs them and stuff too. You buy them directly from him. But yeah, that's awesome. I love his books. I got quite a few. I got Hawkwind, yes, and that one.
Hey, Tony, we're getting a little feedback up here, so I don't know what it is.
And then that's Dark Side of the Moon. So do you want me to talk about that now or go into the other band too?
You got to talk about both of them. You're doing both at once.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You're gonna pick one. You're gonna pick which one you like the best. And
yeah, this is the original American Atlantic release. It's an old one, so it's got the poster and everything in there. There's a poster and that with lyrics and stuff. But then I've also got the Victory remaster when they were on Victory Records.
Oh, wow.
It's nothing special, but it's a good package. It's okay. And then I've got the Sanctuary British Deluxe Edition, which comes with the 5.1 surround sound disc. It's 3 discs on this. This is really good. This is the best I've ever heard. But one of my rarities, and I'm really proud of this, is my DVD 5.1 surround sound on Rhino. This is nuts. Toccata song, when it starts swirling around and doing all kinds of weird things with Carl Palmer, it goes bouncing all over the room. It's like do 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 do. It's like just insane. What a 5.1 mix is totally different than the one on the Sanctuary. But I also understand these are going for over $200 now, and I paid only about $25. Wow. But I've had mine a long time. But anyways, this is like trying to pick your favorite twin if you have 2 kids. I can't do it. I'm going to just go ahead and say I love both of these albums because they mean so much to me. And I was 21 years old when I heard this stuff. And it just immensely changed my life, this music. I mean, I was already a Yes fan. I was into what you'd call prog, but that term didn't exist in those days. But when I heard this, and it was just, oh my God. I just couldn't believe both of these albums were so good. But yeah, they mean so much to me. It's like, it would tear my heart out trying to make a choice because I lived through it. I was there. And I didn't see Emerson, Lake and Palmer until that Works tour in 1977 when they played in San Francisco and they dropped the orchestra, just the 3 guys. And Journey opened for them.
Wow.
And the singer, nobody that's on any album. His name was Robert Fleshman, and he did a good job. But
wow,
Ainsley Dunbar was the drummer, and I was concentrating on him more than anybody in the band because he's so good. When you come out of Frank Zappa and join Journey, that's pretty weird. But anyways, yeah, they mean so much to me. I can't choose.
You can't pick.
They're both 10s to me, both 10s.
So my question for you right now, you don't own either one of them. You're going to the record store. What one are you buying?
I'll buy ELP and steal the Pink Floyd.
All right, there you go. The
I
ELP,
don't think you
gets,
really get the point of a versus.
That's a
show,
good
Ryan.
answer.
ELP gets a slight nod because he has to pay for that one. He steals the Floyd. All righty. So thanks, Rand. We'll pop back to you if you got anything to put back in. It's great that you saw the Pink Floyd tour. It's always great to have someone that was
I've
old
seen it
enough to
twice.
see that the Dark Side of Moon tour on an episode. That's great.
I saw Animals being played 2 years before the album was released.
Wow. Where was that?
Cow Palace.
Okay, so you
Oh,
were
that was the night. I forgot to tell you about this. That was the night my friends and I didn't have anything to do with it, but he decided that he could follow the limos from Alameda to San Francisco because he said he knew that they were staying at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel. So he decided he was going to follow the limos across the bridge over into San Francisco and go up in the hotel with them and hang out at the bar with Pink Floyd. We
Wow.
actually did it. We
Really?
actually did it. They were driving 100 miles an hour across the Bay Bridge, 4 separate limos. Everybody was in their own limo. This is a band that hates each other. It's like, they're on stage for 3.5 hours. They did a 25-minute version of Echoes and then killed the show. It was unbelievable.
So you
And we
actually
stood on the floor through the whole thing. There was no
Wow.
seat. That was crazy.
and you actually went to the bar and you saw those guys. hanging
Yeah,
out?
I was wearing a Yes t-shirt and they wouldn't let me in the bar. So he said, "Here's my car keys. Go in there. I got a shirt in the trunk." And it was too small. I put it on. I think I busted 2 buttons putting it on. And so I come in. It's like, it was weird. We were in you got time for this? I don't know.
Yeah,
we were
sure
in
we
the
do.
elevator together with David Gilmour, Roger Waters, and Nick Mason and Rick Wright. They were all in the elevator and we were with them. And we were stoned because we'd been smoking weed all night. And one of the guys, I think it was Nick, asked me to push the top floor for the bar. It's like a penthouse, but it's a bar.
Yeah.
I'm like, huh? I'm just like out of it. I can't even function because I'm a lightweight anyway. And David Gilmour says, "Never mind, I got it." And he reaches over to grab the button. He hits my shoulder on the way over. And my shoulder goes like back in slow motion, like that what it felt like. And I'm going, wow, I just got hit by David Gilmour, my favorite guitar player. And here's what was really funny. Before they got in the hotel, when they were getting out of the limo, I said, "Which one's Gilmour's?" And everybody was out. I could see which one's going to be Gilmour. So I just walked up really fast as he's getting out of the car. And I shook his hand. And I said, "Welcome to California." And the guy goes, "We were here last night, you fucking idiot." But yeah, it's crazy. And when we got up into the bar where they let me in with my new shirt and stuff, and David's going, he's with us. Those 2 are not with us. He's like, like that. And so we had to sit off the side and watch him like through a glass partition or something like you'd see at the coffee shops. It was surreal. And I don't drink booze, so we had to drink a drink. They wouldn't let us stay there unless we ordered to drink. So I ordered a tequila sunrise, and they go, "Oh, really? You got idea?" Well, I said, "I don't want the tequila. I just want the sunrise." So they gave me orange and grenadine, orange juice and grenadine. And I watched Roger Waters go absolutely apeshit over everything. And David Gilmour's just sitting there across from the table like this.
Wow. That's
And it
some
was
memory.
just like that scene in Pompeii. It was the same kind of thing. And I'm going, man, that dude would argue with a fence post and win.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Cool.
yeah, that's my Pink Floyd story. It was pretty.
I don't think anybody
Pretty
else
cool.
is gonna. I don't know if anybody else is gonna top that story on this panel tonight.
Pretty cool.
Not me. So thanks, Rand. Hey, Tony, I don't know if everybody else is picking up with this. It sounds like there's an alien talking through your thing every once in a while.
I unplugged the mic, so it shouldn't be doing it.
Okay. Anybody else hearing that but me?
Yeah.
You could hear it once in a while. Okay. Maybe just mute it when you're not talking for now.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna go and we're gonna switch gears completely. We're gonna go down to Louisiana and visit my friend that could be wrestling an alligator after this episode. But here he is, Miles Berggren. Welcome.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me again. And both of these albums are like real classic albums. Really not much to be said about both these records. Um, I'm gonna start off with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I'm gonna start off with saying I'm not the biggest prog rock fan ever. I do listen to it and I do like to dive into prog rock. I'm more of a heavy metal guy, but Emerson, Lake and Palmer is one of those bands that I know who they are. I know exactly like everything with them, but I've only heard a lot of their stuff in passing. Like I've heard songs here and there. So coming into this episode, Brain Salad Surgery was an album that I have heard songs off of, but listening through the whole thing as a complete cohesive album, this was the first time I ever did that. And I really could say that this was a very interesting listen. Emerson, Lake and Palmer is they're very chaotic in my opinion. This album is very chaotic, but it's like controlled chaos. It's all put together nice and well, and it's all cohesive, but it's very chaotic. It goes in one direction, and you think that it's going to stay in that one direction, and then all of a sudden it goes off and just goes off into this weird crazy stuff. The keyboards on here are just they're all over the place at times, and it's just a really crazy album to listen to. And for the first time ever listening to this album, like putting it all together and actually paying attention to it, I really liked it. The only song I can say that for me personally I didn't care for was Benny the Bouncer. It just didn't work for me, just with the keyboards and stuff. But the Corn Evil 9 first impression part 1, 2, 3, I mean part 1 and 2, and then the second impression and third impression. I really like that side of the album. And I also like Still You Turn Me On. That's a real nice song. Jerusalem's a good song. But in my personal opinion, it's a little bit too proggy for me at times when listening to it. Like I have to be in a certain mood to get into this album. But and I don't want to completely say bad things about this album because I know how classic it is and I can see the musicianship that went into it. But for me personally, there's a certain type of place for this album and a certain time for me with this album. But I really do like it. And three songs I would pick. Still You Turn Me On is a great song. And Carn Evil 9, I don't know whether to pick First Impression Part 1 but I'm gonna pick First Impression Part 1 as my number 2. And then I like the Third Impression. I like that one as well. But going into this album, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, one of the most iconic albums ever made. I was introduced to Pink Floyd at a very young age. A lot of my family members who like rock music are like huge Pink Floyd fans. I remember watching DVD live of Pink Floyd and being completely blown away whenever they played Comfortably Numb, which to me is one of the best songs ever created in music, in my personal opinion. But this album here is just, I have so many memories with this album, and it's crazy to hear Rand talk because he was actually alive and through it when this album came out. I'm only 30, so I'm after this came out, but I have listened to this album stoned completely out of my mind. And there was a point in time where I used to listen to this album almost every week. It was like ingrained into my DNA. And I'm gonna be the first one to say it. I listened to this album synced up with The Wizard of Oz, stoned completely out of my mind, and I was blown the fuck away. And I was, this album, it's it's been with me for so long, and you know, and I can say this is not even my favorite Pink Floyd record.
Yep.
Animals is my favorite Pink Floyd record.
Okay.
But you know, Speak to Me, Breathe, Time, great song, Money, awesome, catchy song. The Great Gig in the Sky, just classic. And my favorite song off of here is Us and Them. It's
Okay.
one of the best Pink Floyd songs to me personally. But every song on here is classic. And I love how the album ties in, every song ties in together so well. And both of these, I would give Emerson, Lake and Palmer an 8 out of 10 just because I would need more time with that record. But this is a 10 out of 10 for me.
Mm-hmm.
My second favorite Pink Floyd record. And I'm picking Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Excellent, excellent. Ed, you got to run to work soon, so I think should we pop you on next?
All right, that sounds good. Yeah,
Because you might not make the whole episode.
yeah, I'm gonna have to leave soon.
Okay, cool. So we'll move over to where are you at? Brooklyn tonight? You Brooklyn tonight?
New Jersey, Jersey.
Oh, you're
I'm
in
home.
Jersey. That's right. Yeah, all right. I always think of Brooklyn when I think of you for some reason.
That's what I do everything. I live out here, but I do all my work and stuff in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Basically, gonna start off with ELP, brain salad surgery. Back in the mid '70s, I really had no one to turn to show me like rock and roll and stuff. My mom was into '50s music. My dad was into country, tenors and stuff. So I discovered rock on my own through the radio and whatever else. I did have one older cousin that I saw once or twice a year. My cousin Bruce lived in Connecticut. He was a few years older than me, and he would turn me on when I would see him to hard rock and progressive rock. One time when I was visiting out there, he gave me a copy of his copy of Brain Salad Surgery and a Yes album. And he was like, "You guys go home, listen to this stuff, really listen to it a lot and get into it." And I did, and it was fantastic. So that was my first experience with this album. I've loved it ever since. It's definitely a very out there album in some ways, very progressive and very absolutely insane with the synthesizers. Keith really goes off during Toccata and a few other parts of the album, but it all works, it all gels together. Starting off with Jerusalem and Toccata, they're both very orchestral. Especially Toccata is just a prog, a prog rock trip, is what I call it. And it definitely is. He just goes ballistic with the synthesizers. It's pretty wild. Still, You Still Turn Me On is one of my favorite ELP songs. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's a beautiful song in every way. Benny the Bouncer, definitely an interesting song for ELP, a different side to them. Lighthearted, basically English drinking song, it sounds like. But it's fun, which I like about that. They have definitely a fun side to them as well. Carnival 9, just 4 brilliant parts to this song for this song. The second impression is always the popular one. That's the one everyone knows. But all 4 parts are just brilliant, especially the way they come together. Just a great album, greatly enhanced by smoking a lot of weed. Absolutely. I would give the album an 8 out of 10. Dark Side of the Moon next is, what can you say about Dark Side of the Moon? There's a reason it's been on the charts forever. It holds the records for being on the charts. It holds all kinds of sales records. It's considered iconic. It's just universally just recognized around the world because it is one of the greatest albums of all time. Pink Floyd are, in my opinion, the greatest band of all time. But Pink Floyd is the best band. Love everything from the Piper Gates of Dawn to the Endless River. Every dimension they've gone into, every genre they've explored, every sound that they've produced. I love every bit of it. I think they're the most brilliant band ever. This is, of course, one of their greatest albums, but again, not one of my favorite albums either. Animals, Metal, The Final Cut, my favorite albums, then Dark Side, The Wall, Wish You Were Here, but every album is fantastic. This album is just perfect in every way. You can't pick one song. I mean, this is the favorite song. You can't listen to part of this song and just listen to it and, jumbled up or whatever. It's an album. It's a perfect album from start to finish. And it flows. And if anyone has done the Wizard of Oz thing, you see how it flows so well to the movie too. always a trip doing. You got to line it up just right. When you line it up just right, and you smoke a lot of weed, it really seems to be exactly made together, and it's great. It's good times. All right. I used
Cool.
to see the album done to laser light shows at the Hayden Planetarium in the 80s.
I remember those. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Used to go out there every Friday night. It
Yeah.
was cool. They had The Wall, they had Dark Side of the Moon, they had various Pink Floyd stuff, but it's a good time. I miss those laser light shows.
Yeah,
Can you-
right. You don't hear about that anymore, Ed. And talking about the Wizard of Oz thing, I can remember because, you know, back in the day at the record store, and you'd find them at other shops too. You'd always have the bootleg VHS tapes that would have, it would be all set up for you. You just pop it in the deck, and it was all set up with the Wizard of Oz and Pink Floyd. I remember
That's-
selling.
YouTube got it too.
Oh, probably does. Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
say
I know
back in
they
the-
got
back
it.
in the day, we used to sell
I
them
know they got it.
at the flea markets and the fairs, and you know, it'd be in a plastic case. Yeah, yeah. So,
That was always wild.
at being a New York City guy, I think maybe you're old enough to remember the WPLJ, and I was in my notes for later, but PLJ used to run with Carnival 9, like come and see the show, and that was part of the what do you actually want to call that? Like the advertisement where they'd say just WPLJ, and it would play.
Station.
Yeah, a station ID it was, right?
Absolutely. I remember those.
Yep, yep. Cool.
Man, yeah, I mean, I've seen both Roger and David, different incarnations, doing Dark Side of the Moon live, and it's always just a fantastic show.
Mhm.
And can't really pick any particular songs, although Time, one of my all-time top favorite Pink Floyd songs.
Yeah.
Us and another one of my top Pink Floyd songs, just absolutely beautiful. Brain Damage and Eclipse, the absolute perfect ending to an album, to an absolutely perfect album. This album to me gets a 10 plus 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 plus. It's absolutely perfect. ELP is fantastic, but if I had one choice, certainly Dark Side of the Moon. Can't go
Yep.
wrong with Pink anytime at all. I do have a couple props this time. I usually don't show anything,
Oh wow,
but
cool.
I have my original ELP, the fold out, with
Yep.
the poster, everything else inside. Dark Side of the Moon, I have a few different copies of. I have the original EMI Harvest version,
Yeah.
gatefold, of course. The Capitol, also gatefold. Then I have a original master recordings posted, pressed in Japan, also gatefold. Then I have a bootleg live album from '72 and a 3 LP set bootleg live album,
Wow.
'72, with Dark Side and a whole bunch of other classics like Echoes and Saucer Full of Secrets and Seven Controls. And I got Dark Side CDs and books and all kinds of shit. Again, my all-time favorite band. That's it for me, guys. Have a great night. I do have to shut off now myself as well. Gotta get to. I watch the rest of this in a couple days.
All right,
Take care, guys.
please. All right,
Have a
see you next week, Ed. All righty. So, as we got, what do we got? We got 4 of us left, including me. I guess we'll go to our newbie tonight, all the way from Glasgow, Scotland, he says. And David Gallagher, welcome. Let's hear your point of view. Then we'll go over to Ralph with Tony Dio, and then I will wrap this thing up.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Steve. Pleasure to be here. Interesting one, because they're completely iconic albums in their own right, but Brain Salad Surgery is probably only really iconic to prog rock fans and some classic rock fans. It's certainly not the accepted classic that Dark Side is. You ain't going to see kids wearing the t-shirt of the H.R. Geiger cover who haven't heard the album, but you will see that for the Pink Floyd records. So it's not got the pop culture awareness that that Dark Side does. So it's got that against it. People are inclined, obviously, to just think of Dark Side and think it must be a masterpiece because they've been told it for so long. So just like in reverse, Brain Salad Surgery, if people haven't heard it as much, they're probably not as inclined to think of it as a masterpiece because they've got more listening to do, a lot more homework, a lot less history with it, just by proxy and not hearing it as often. Jerusalem's an interesting one for me, because it was banned from the BBC. Here's
Wow.
here's the Portuguese single of it.
Oh,
The BBC banned it because Jerusalem, I don't think it will mean anything in the States, but it's a poem by William Blake. All the lyrics are by Blake, and the BBC thought it was kind of sacrilege for those lyrics that talk about England's green and pleasant lands to be done in a rock style, very much the way some people rebelled against Hendrix doing the Star Spangled Banner in a rock style at Woodstock. So the BBC completely banned the single. So Jerusalem got absolutely no airplay because of that. There you go. And interestingly, the extra tracks on that, where the Apple Blossoms Bloom, Windmills Your Mind, I'll Be a Valentine, are from these sessions, but would show up later in the works, volume 2. Toccata's fascinating. I've just touched on it already. It's quite eerie, quite deranged. It almost reminds me of Witch Hunt by Rush or something, in the atmosphere that it kind of raises, you know, the kind of offbeat and almost a cult feel that it has in places. And again, that's based on a classical piece, just like a lot of the stuff that Keith was doing. And Keith's really the progenitor of a lot of this stuff. It's coming from a classical piece by Ginestra. Goes on a little bit longer than perhaps I personally appreciate, but ELP were a different project than Pink Floyd. They were always a supergroup, whereas Pink Floyd were just a band who became a massive band, whereas ELP were intended to be a supergroup. So they all have their moments where you can see, okay, Carl's obviously got to have a solo now because Keith's just had his solo. So, you know, you can't have somebody not getting their time in the sun. So you can almost see the kind of egos being attached to the arrangements in certain places. You can kind of pick and choose where the solos are going to go almost because of the supergroup egotism. Whereas I think this is the last Floyd album where you can really see it's a collaborative effort, a real collaboration between everybody. Although Roger did all the lyrics, Rick Wright is so massive to the sound of that album, it's not real. Rick Wright is the unsung hero of Dark Side. But to go into a bit more of Brain Salad, and I have never understood why Still You Turn Me On was not a single. I have never understood that. It was released as the B-side of Brain Salad Surgery, the single, but this wasn't until 77, and you know that was 4 years later on the works too. And apparently the reason is that Carl Palmer only plays tambourines. He doesn't play drums on Still You Turn Me On at all. So he kind of vetoed it. But to me, that could have been a crossover hit, no problem whatsoever. And if that had been a crossover hit, I think the album could have been a lot bigger, because it's amazing to me that this album is considered such a classic. But ELP never had one platinum album, not one.
wow.
I mean, we think of all these classics like Tarkus, like Self-Titled, like Trilogy, like this. Not one of them went platinum, not a single one. So it's small decisions like that I think held them back. I think Still You Turn Me On, if that had been a single, it would have pushed them forward. Greg Lake's vocals on are absolutely stunning. He can do a ballad like nobody's business. I mean, him singing Epitaph with Crimson is one of the great vocals in the history of music for my tastes. Just breathtaking stuff. But he's brilliant on this, and not many ballads have wah-wah pedals on them. I kind of love that. Benny the Bouncer is a kind of silly novelty song, but it kind of lets a bit of air into the room before a big progressive masterpiece, you know, an attempt at a big, you know, close to the edge, massive thing. So they're kind of doing something silly just to deflate the kind of tension. It reminds me a bit of you know, Cream sticking Mother's Lament on Disraeli Gears or something, you know, just like a silly song just to have whatever Rand's up to there, just to have one silly song to kind of take the tension away from the rest of it. And then you jump into, I mean, Carnival, whether you want to treat it as one piece or 4 pieces, regardless. I mean, we've got Pete Sinfield writes the lyrics of it, and he'd obviously worked with Greg before on Crimson. He would stay on with Crimson as a lyricist after Greg left, but Carnival is probably the most ELP ELP thing there ever is in its entirety. When people think of what ELP is, they're pretty much thinking of Carnival. It's self-indulgent, it's over the top, it's kind of ridiculous. It's also kind of wonderful. It's magical, it's mercurial, it's brilliantly played, it's phenomenally produced by Greg Lake. Everything sounds majestic. It's as close as you can get towards being self-indulgent and not crossing the line into self-parody, which I think they would reach, unfortunately, a couple of years later, but they're not quite there yet. It's also a really good, Carnival's a really good song from a lyrical point of view, but it tells you the story of the downfall of humanity and the rise of the machines. It does tell you that story, and especially the last track with the third impression. I mean, how apt is that? Especially just this very weather at the moment this season. I mean, we are literally reading in the news every week about AI.
Yeah, a good point. I was just thinking the same thing, David, before you ever got to it. Yeah.
And Elon Musk saying that it's a real danger to humanity. I mean, that literally is how this album ends. The computer laughs at the human for thinking he's in charge.
Danger.
Yeah.
Then he blows up their ship.
And that kind of reminds me a bit of Zappa with the central scrutinizer on Joe's Garage. But yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful track. It's as proggy as hell, obviously. It's it also reflects very, Rand, this is a thing I associate with you, obviously. It's very sci-fi themed, this album as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Davey, that I think they got the idea from Star Trek. I've seen a lot of Star Trek episodes between 66 and 68 that dealt with computers that were taking over ships, and they couldn't stop them.
Well, even sound-wise, I mean, just literally, if this was an instrumental record, I think you'd still think sci-fi in your head, because they are coming up with sounds that were synonymous with sci-fi at the time.
Yeah,
I got a mini Voyager right here, buddy.
Sci-fi sounds like, the soundtrack to things like the Andromeda Strain sound like, and things. The soundtrack to, I mean, jumping to the other record, Pink Floyd always cite Doctor Who and the Radiophonic Workshop at the BBC as a massive influence on metal. So sci-fi is a big part of this kind of progressive period of synth music. And
yeah, the Theremin and Daily Earth Stood Still by Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is because the big studio making films or the BBC making Doctor Who could afford synths before little bands could. Little bands couldn't afford these kind of things, but the BBC could, Paramount could. So that's why they had the technology. They have the technology. They can rebuild him. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely nuts. I mean, Greg sings his heart out all over Second Impression, and Second Impression is probably, how bizarre is it that that's one of the most well-known tracks, despite the fact that it's the middle part of such a massive epic.
Can I correct you, Davey, just a little bit?
No, you can't. You can try, but you can't. What are you going to say?
Oh, yeah. When you say Second Impression, what you mean is First Impression Part 2, because there is a first impression, there's a second impression, and there's a third impression. Second impression is completely instrumental.
You're about to hear something I don't say very often. I stand corrected.
Well, I've been around longer than you, buddy.
That's okay. That means I've got time on my side. The First Impression Part 2 from Greg is so iconic, and you think that's so bizarre that would kind of be taken out of this. And I guess it's because it's got such interesting, fun parts that do stand alone. Welcome my friends to the show that never ends. You can put that anywhere, and it kind of sounds cool. They would open shows with that announcement and things. It would be it's a kind of mainstay of all their live things that they ever did. I think it was on every show they ever did after this, pretty much.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't do Carnival, they did at least.
They would do that.
Impression. What? Yeah, a bit like Prince wouldn't always do Let's Go Crazy, but he would always do the Dearly Beloved part at the start, and then just jump straight into the rest of it. Yeah, I mean it's a brilliant, dark, brooding record that I think is imaginative as hell. It's jazzy as well. That's another part of it. Keith's kind of playing around. He's not just doing a progressive thing. He's also playing some very jazzy parts, especially when he's playing straight piano rather than
Yeah.
on keys. He's playing some real jazz stuff. Some stuff that wouldn't be out of place on Blue Note Records or something. Which
And
you
in
don't
second
associate.
impression, he's playing steel drums on a mini Moog like this. He's pushing the
Great.
thing down and it's going steel
Great.
drums.
This it's like having Ed McMahon with you here. You just keep getting interrupted.
Ed
Why I got
McMahon.
fired.
Yeah, all right. Quiet. Well, we're gonna mute Rand so we can let David finish. Yeah,
no,
David,
but I mean,
David
no.
just-
Rand and I have been on a million shows together. We know the score.
it's good to have you both together. I see how you work.
Yeah, it's so, and then to go into Dark Side, then I don't need to go into all the tracks because it's Dark Side of the Moon. That's kind of my point about the first part, is all those tracks that I mentioned from Brain Salad. Casual viewers, casual fans will probably go, what's that one again? What's that one? Nobody's going to be saying that with any of the tracks for Pink Floyd. Everybody and their granny knows Dark Side. My mother knows Dark Side, and she doesn't know shit from Apple Butter. She, everybody knows at least Money, or they at least know some of the strange sound effects that come from it, or they know the Wizard of Oz story. That kind of thing just seeps into pop culture. We've already kind of covered between the guys I've gone already. Breathes, one of the best tracks, I think. Especially, I think Dave, for as great as a guitar player as he is, I don't think he ever gets the credit as being such a great singer that he deserves. I think he's got a wonderful voice. And in tracks like, I know it's not on this, but on the Nail song, for example, you hear what a great heavy singer he can be. And it demonstrates that in places here. Even when he's doing the run, rabbit, run, he's got kind of gravel to his voice that I really appreciate. I think it's really pleasant because people tend to think his voice is a bit light, and I don't think it is. I think he's got a real grit to when he wants to, a real bite. On the Run has got that EMS synth, which is very Eno, very Jean-Michel Jarre. It sounds like they're trying to do a little bit Tangerine Dream kind of thing going on there. But it's quite fascinating to listen to how that's sped up so fast. And if you watch the Classic Albums documentary on the making of Dark Side, you get to see Dave literally doing that in the studio and watch him speed, how they did all these kind of effects. And it's quite fascinating to watch how that's done. Similarly, in that documentary, you get to watch Alan Parsons, obviously, who engineered the album, at the mixing desk, and you get to see him with Us and Them, and he takes the echo out. So we're so used to us, and them. Yeah. So you take out the echo, and all of a sudden you just get us and them. It does not sound the same at all. It's so weird that just taking one little idea, let's make this an echo, one of those little ideas, and it completely kills the track stone dead. Time's obviously such a classic. There's another great part in that documentary, the Classic Albums documentary, where the Doris Troy, great singer herself, one of the backing vocalists on Dark Side, says, those white boys sure loved oohs and ahs. All they kept saying was do some more oohs and do some more ahs. And you can hear it throughout this album. Every time they sing, those backing vocalists, it's ooh, ah, and then when you hear it all together, boy, it just lifts everything up, doesn't it? It's just, it's how to go epic without going over the top epic. It's a different type of epic to what Keith's doing over there with the keys. It's a very different type, but it's more of a structured epic rather than a performance epic, rather than a virtuoso epic. I love the reprise of Breathe coming in. On the end of that as well on Time, where they bring that, when he starts singing the home again,
Yeah.
That part, 7 minutes long, and it never feels it to me, that track. It really doesn't. It's amazing that they managed to hold your attention for that amount of time. The Great Gig in the Sky with Claire Torrey. I mean, she obviously got the lawsuit against the band and won, because they said to her, just go in and kind of scat vocal, and boy, she makes that track, so she deserves that co-writing credit. I mean, what would it be without her? It would just be a nice piano piece with some country playing from Dave, but she turns it into something epic. And apparently she thought what she was doing was terrible, but it's exactly what they wanted. And it's a piece that was lying around for ages from Zabriskie Point, the Antonioni film that Floyd did some of the songs for. So it was kind of brought back for that. Money's a radio song that everybody and their granny knows as well. Still such an unusual single, though. I mean, it's in 7/4 time, which is so unusual. Dick Parry's sleazy sax all over it, so it's still pretty cool to hear a track like Money. You know, to think that that's commercial. It's only commercial by Pink Floyd standards. It's not really commercial by anybody else's. And again, my favourite too is Us and Them. I think that is the most ethereal track on the whole thing. It kind of the echoes being removed to show you what they add when you do get to hear them again. It's so low key and lovely, and then it becomes epic with the forward it cries, you know, with everything being added. It's everything but the kitchen sink, big in a totally different way from the way that the ELP album is everything but the kitchen sink. Any Colour You Like, quite unusual segue into a nice synth piece again. Dave has two guitars being double tracked onto it. Brain Damage, as mentioned, with the clips, they kind of just flow into each other, don't they? So it's pretty much the same track. The Lunatic is on the grass part, so really desolate and dark. I think they're really quite, especially when you know that Roger was thinking of Sid so much. You think, oh, it's quite hard to listen to that. But then when you get those parts that elevate it again, and once more we have the oohs and ahs coming back from Doris Troy and co, where it starts doing the and if the band you're in start playing, we'll see you on the dark side of the moon. That again just sounds like a massive epic chorus, but they're not playing it like that. So it's like they're building things up in the studio, and you can do that because you're Pink Floyd and you've got Alan Parsons in the booth with you, whereas ELP are doing it just through their own dexterity and their own talent and their own. I don't want to say egotism, but I think there is an element of that. There is a bit of show-offiness to Keith Emerson, and there always was. ELP to me are very much Keith Emerson with the other two. He's very much the leader in terms of the sound, whereas Floyd, at their best, for me, were a collaborative project. If I had to choose between the two, jumping back and forth like this, I mean, it's so easy to just say Dark Side, isn't it? But it's because I think there's just not enough pure emotion on Brain Salad Surgery to make it a complete 10 out of 10 masterpiece for me. It doesn't have something that really breaks me, really shatters me, that there is on loads of tracks on Dark Side. And I wish there was just more Greg Lake singing, actually. I could use a lot more of Greg Lake. There isn't enough of his bass playing either. He doesn't get to do a lot of that. He gets to play some guitar, but not terribly much. So yeah, it's really Carl Palmer and Keith Emerson's showcase, with some lyrics sung, some Peter Sinfield lyrics sung by Greg, versus a studio masterpiece from EMI Abbey Road. It's probably one of the greatest things to come out of that studio, and that's saying something when you think about the classics that were recorded at Abbey Road. So I'm going to give the nod to Dark Side, but it's not to put down. Not to put down Brain Salad in any way, shape, or form, other than to say, hey, if you're up against Muhammad Ali, I'm sorry, you're going to go down in the first. So sorry.
Great rundown there, David. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
So Pink Floyd's kind of given a beat down on a little bit, but I mean, it's not really a competition. We're really discussing both great albums. We're just picking a favorite.
Yeah.
And we're going to head over to Tony Dio and to Ralph, and then I'm wrapping it up tonight. Tony, welcome.
Let me unmute myself here. Okay. Yeah, so I can't say that I'm a huge prog rock fan. I'm more of a rock and roll and metal guy, but I do appreciate good musicianship, and there's a lot of that in prog music. And we listen to a lot of prog at the store at where I work a lot of times, just as background music, anything from, you know, Spock's Beard to Dream Theater to the more modern prog stuff. You know, it has a lot of crazy guitar solos and so forth in it. But honestly, I have never listened to Brain Salad Surgery as a whole until 3 days ago.
Wow.
And I mean, I thought it was interesting that David mentioned that Still You Turn Me On had never been released as a single, because I knew that song right off the bat. I mean, I think it was, you know, in classic rock radio in the 80s and 90s, it got picked up and was played pretty regularly over here. So I knew that song, and I'm familiar with other ELP songs as well. And of course, the part of Carnival 9, the Welcome to the Show, my friends, you know, I knew that. I had heard that many times before. Most of it, to me, I mean, I thought it was very well put together, but a lot of it was just like a cacophony to me, you know, because it's just so much going on when you're listening to it, and but it's very well put together, and some great, you know, musicianship on it. Really cool. One of the things I was familiar with the band is I had a DVD set one time that was like a documentary, and it had some videos and stuff, and it had the California Jam performance on it, and that was just incredible. And Keith Emerson's got this piano that spins. If you've ever seen it, I mean, this is like beginning days of Kiss, Alice Cooper, you know, and here is this theatrical stage show. They've got this piano organ or whatever that comes up and it starts spinning, and that was at the California Jam in '74. And they actually they kind of got upstage there a little bit because Deep Purple played before them, and Richie Blackmore refused to go on until dusk. Wow. And and then he got pissy with ABC camera crew, and he's known he smashed a camera with his guitar.
Wow.
So ELP's footage was down a camera. So there was one camera, maybe like stage left, that didn't, you know, pick up anything. They didn't have a camera for that for ABC. So maybe that's why they never released all that footage, because it wasn't complete the way they wanted it or something. But I always thought the album cover was just brilliant. The H.R. Geiger cover.
Oh yeah.
You know, I remember my cousins having it and opening up that die cut cover, and you'd open it up and expose the other photos that's in it. Just really, really neat album cover. Now, Pink Floyd's a different thing for me. I do like Pink Floyd a lot. I don't profess to be a great, huge Pink Floyd fan, but I do like them a whole lot. They're probably not even in my top 100 bands, but I still love Pink Floyd. Because I like hundreds of bands. But I got into them in the 80s, you know, just being a fan of rock and hard rock and stuff, everything, you know, from Ozzy to Kiss to Judas Priest. I liked Pink Floyd. That was just something that my friends were into. And I think the first thing I ever got was The Wall, of course, and hearing, you know, Another Brick in the Wall on the radio. And so I got that one first, and I think I picked up Dark Side maybe second, and Animals. Like a couple people have said, Animals is my favorite album by them as well. Pretty much my whole Pink Floyd collection is in this Shine On box set with all the CDs that I have now. But I always go back to Animals as my favorite. But you can't, you know, deny that Dark Side of the Moon is just such an awesome album. I guess if I was to pick 3 songs, and that's almost impossible because the whole album's so great. I love Us and Them. I love Time. And Brain Damage Eclipse is just a brilliant song as well. But yeah, it's just, you know, there's so many good memories and stuff go back with stuff from that album from over the years, and I've done the Wizard of Oz thing as well with it, so that was pretty neat. But if I got to pick one, of course I'm going to pick Dark Side of the Moon in this case.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Tony. Mr. Ralph, sorry to keep you waiting, but here you are.
All right. So yeah, I got this album long time ago, and it's been a real long time since I listened to it in full. But I basically found it in a used bin, and I bought it because it had this beautiful album cover by my all-time favorite artist. I love H.R. Giger. He's my favorite of all time. So I got a few props from H.R. Giger. That this is even books. Necronomicon Part 2. Giger's Alien. Just to show you, this is why I would pick up the album, just because of the album cover. You know, back then that's how you did things, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the cover even looks like a space jockey or something.
Yeah. These are some old calendars that I got.
Wow.
All right, so
Ralph's Museum here.
Even got this cool little statue thing, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love having a reason to go back to this album and listen to this. It was so much better than I remembered it, and I really liked it. I like this song Benny the Bouncer because it's so different, quirky, upbeat, and sort of angry vocals in a way. And it's so different than the rest of the album. But Toccata, great trippy song, cool, menacing, chaotic, upbeat, and of course Carnival. I like the first part one. It's just so many parts to it, so much going on, really intricate. The production on this whole album and the drums on this album are really awesome. I love the musicianship, and everybody said so many cool things about this album. Really great album. I'm gonna go back to it more often. Then going to Pink Floyd, I got my original, you know, Dark Side of the Moon, the gatefold. I get the poster I got in a garage. I used to have it hanging up, the green pyramid one, and I had the postcards and stuff, but I don't got it all together now. And you know, Pink Floyd is my favorite all-time classic rock band. I like them more than any other classic rock band. I've seen Pink Floyd live 3 times in the 80s and 90s, and I seen Roger Waters 8 times. He did I seen David Gilmour once live solo, but Roger Waters for like 3 years he toured Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety, and I caught it 3 times that show. I got the original tour book, comes like in an album sleeve, and really cool. You know, I would love to have that original tour book that Rand was talking about. That's probably like one of the most sought after tour books of all time.
I don't have it anymore.
Oh, it'd be worth a ton of money. It was like a comic book, right? It was small, like a magazine.
Yeah.
But I've seen things about it. I've seen like everything that was in it and everything. I would love to have that. Of course, I got the CD, and I got an old poster here, and it's interesting. It says 1972 on it, and you know, somebody was saying before how they seen like animals like 2 years before, you know, but that
in 75.
Pink Floyd would like work those songs live for years before they would put out the album and stuff. But yeah, so songs, I mean, it's everybody said so many great things about this album. I love Time. Every time I hear it, I think of the visuals when I would see them live, where they have the clocks floating around and the hands of the clock would be spinning and stuff. And great big gig in the sky with Claire Torrey, like Davey was saying about the lawsuit there. She got paid like a flat rate, and that was it. And then the album goes on to being the 4th greatest selling album of all time. Imagine never getting any royalties for that. So it's great that they settled out of court. I'm glad that they settled out of court. It wasn't like an ugly big thing that you heard, because she definitely deserved it. She really made that song. And she got co-authorship with Richard Wright. I love Us and Them. I love Brain Damage. I love everything on this album. It's not my favorite Pink Floyd album, but it's up there. It's a classic. And yeah, that's it. I don't want to take
Cool.
up too much time, but I'd go for Pink Floyd if I got to pick one. It's definitely
Okay.
Pink Floyd.
Hey Ralph, which tours did you see?
I seen Momentary Lapse of Reason was the first time, and then Division Bell I seen twice.
Wow.
Well,
Times when I seen Roger Waters doing Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety. One of the times was at PNC Art Center, a big outdoor thing, and it was Roger Waters' birthday, and they had the giant pig, and these guys had him on ropes, and they went out into the crowd, and they were running around in the field at the place, and then they just let it go, and it was a full moon that night. Roger Waters' birthday, they're doing Dark Side of the Moon, and they let the pig float up into the sky, and for
Wow.
the whole song, I mean, for the rest of the show, you just kept looking up to see where it was. And you
yeah.
could just see this thing floating and floating. And I talked about it on Pardo's channel about how I wonder if they had to get in touch with the airports and say, hey, there's going to be this giant pig floating around out there.
Yeah, or they'll be
Probably.
blaming it on China. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine waking up the next day and this big pig is landed on your house and it's like
Yeah.
I saw
When pigs fly.
Yeah, I saw the Division Bell tour. And it's still one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my
I saw
life.
that one too.
And I worked for Roger Waters. I worked as a runner for when he did the Wall tour several years back. And I got a piece. Remember, I had the projection screens on the pieces of the wall as they were building it.
Yep.
I got a section. They threw a piece of it out. A couple of the stagehands got it and cut it up, and I got a little piece of the wall, and I stuck my stage pass on it, and I have it in my memorabilia collection.
That's cool.
Yeah, I seen that the Wall tour twice, and I think that was the greatest production I've ever seen out of the 1,000 concerts I've gone to.
It was
can't
great.
put any concert production over Pink Floyd. I mean, Roger Waters doing the Wall. It was the most amazing show I ever seen.
Cool.
Yeah, great.
And of course, talking to Roger, we're getting his version of Dark Side, his reversion in the next few months. So that'll be interesting. See what that's like.
Make us all buy it again for the millions.
Go ahead. As we got Record Store Day in the States. I don't know if do you do that in Europe too, David?
Yes, we do. It's all the same kind of titles. We just have different quantities. So, like Suede, for example, we'll get a lot more over here than you guys will get the London Suede. So you'll get, 5. We'll get 500. That kind of thing. So
they're reissuing Pink Floyd, not Pink Floyd, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Brain Salad Surgery. This year.
It's a picture disc, huh?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of just doing things as picture discs for record day. That's so lazy.
Well, anyhow, then recently they put out a live album of Dark Side of the Moon too. That's a new release that came out about 3 weeks ago. We just got that back in stock. But I guess I need to talk about what I got down for the 2 albums. ELP, Where Do I Start? It's one of my favorite albums of all time. It's like, I agree with Ralph, it's possibly the coolest album cover ever. I think that's just iconic. That album cover, it's such a great imagery. And Carnival 9, I talked a little bit about with Ed Farsley. I remember the local radio station WPLJ, and when I was a kid you would just hear that. You got to see the show, and it was like something they used for their radio ID. And my favorite tracks are Carnival 9. It's hard, I could break it up. I just love all of it. I'm gonna include it as one song because I never listened to one. And I'm glad you brought that up, David, about I was listening to it today at the gym because I was at the gym this morning. I said, let me give this another listen as we do the show tonight. And I got thinking about that, where the robots talking. I'm like, man, this is like AI and what we're talking about in the news and the scary world I'm living in 2023, which you just can't, anything could go on now. If Godzilla was spotted in the ocean, I think who would doubt it right now? But Still You Turn Me On is another great song. Jerusalem, Toccata, of course, Seven Virgins, a Mule, Keep It Cool, Keep It Cool. I remember like when that song came out, like my friends going like, "Oh man, did you hear the lyrics to this song? You know, come to see the show." It's like all this crazy stuff going on, and but it's definitely it was tough. You know, listening to this, I have to go with Pink Floyd "Dark Side of the Moon" as my favorite, just just because it's. How do you go against it? I'm like
Yeah.
Rand. I love them both. I don't really want to choose one or the other, but it is a little bit of a competition. Dark Side of the Moon, I really have a fond memory of, other than loving this album all my life. Years ago, was in the early 2000s. I spent a lot of time in Southwest Florida. I've told the story before on the channel, and spent a lot of time. My mother-in-law was in very poor health. She was awaiting a lung transplant, and my wife and I would go down to her house a lot, and so she'd spend time with mom, and I'd want something to do. It was kind of like my vacation time. So her sister-in-law would live down there, so we'd go out, go to the bars, go to the beach and stuff while they were visiting at home. And one day I just had this craving to listen to Pink Floyd, and back then you didn't have Spotify, you didn't have YouTube. You had to go to the record store and buy it. So I said, "Hey, Tony, I kind of want to listen to Dark Side of the Moon." She goes, "Well, there's a record store right in the mall. Let's go see if they got it." So we went and bought the CD, driving around that day and those couple days and listening to that album. And a few years later, she was tragically killed. But every time so rest in peace, Tony. But of course, every time I hear that record now, I think of her. And I think of that day, and it has such great meaning to me. And I think, hey, Tony, we're playing Dark Side of the Moon again. So rest in peace, of course. I dedicate Time and The Great Gig in the Sky to her memory for the show tonight. And the album is untouchable, in my opinion. I mean, I guess it is touchable if you like Animals better, which I probably do. But this album's just a classic. It's tough to pick tracks, but I also would pick Breathe in the Air, and of course, Time and Money. I mean, Money's the big radio hit. It's kind of played out as hell if you listen to classic rock radio in the States. But I'm going with Pink Floyd on this one. But they're both great, and I don't have my Pink Floyd copy, but I have this copy. And if you want a picture disc of it, come to Rock Fantasy if you're in the area. We've got a couple copies in for Saturday, and it was great that we went back 50 years and touched that. We've been doing a lot of metal lately, but it's always fun to bring Rand on when we talk about our classics. He's waving his finger at me and David.
He's saying it's not fun to have Rand on. That's what he's saying.
Oh, it's not fun.
I've got three fun facts for you guys before we go. Is that okay?
All right,
yeah, we'll be the judge. We'll be the judge of whether it's fun
I
or
like
not.
that David keeps them in line here. We're going to bring David back next time too. So as we wrap this up, please take a moment.
Chain around my neck.
Please take a moment to the viewers to mention what you like about these albums and what you like is what your favorite is. And please take a moment to like and subscribe. I do a lot of concert footage. We do interviews with bands. We do music chats, and that's what the Rock Fantasy channel is all about. If you've never watched it before, or I have a record store here in Middletown, New York, near New York City. So I guess Rand is going to close us out with his 3 fun facts. David, you'll have to make sure these are real facts now.
5 minutes tops. Okay, Tony hit the nail on the head when he talked about seeing Emerson, Lake and Palmer at the California Jam. If you buy this, it's called Emerson, Lake and Palmer Beyond the Beginning. Yep. You get all 44 minutes of their show.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
It's ABC. We watched it live on TV in Eureka, California, the home of Mike Patton, by the way.
Yeah.
Where we were watching through the television on ABC, and I said, "You guys know that the local FM station on the very right side simulcasts this station?" And they go, "No, we didn't know that." I said, "Watch." And I grabbed the tuner and I turned it all the way to the right, and it was the ABC running through the stereo speakers, which were huge speakers. They were like 4 feet off the ground, and they were huge, and they were surrounding us. And I said, "Wait till you hear this." They went to a commercial. I'll never forget this. They went to a commercial, and they had a little tool that would vacuum up tacks off a floor or a shelf. And we had it really cranked. and nobody thought to turn it down. And they turned that thing on, and it was just like, it was just so freaking loud. It was unbelievable. Okay, so that's a fun fact. And then another thing about
Oh, it was something that happened. I'm not having that as a fun fact, I'm afraid. No, there was no
But
fact.
anyway,
It
we
wasn't
watched the
funny, but-
concert. We watched the concert, and Deep Purple set the stage on fire. One of their pyro things got out of control. And
Richie Blackmore.
was
Yeah, well,
behind him, and he's
Richie
got
Blackmore
a
got out of
9-foot
control, yeah.
flame behind him, and he goes flying towards the front of the stage. And it looked really showy and everything, but he was scared to death. He thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
What's the other fun fact? Emerson Lake Ball. Oh yeah, a couple of years, well, several years ago now, about 10 years ago, maybe even more. I was Facebook friends with Peter Sinfield, and I asked him about that credit on Brain Salad Surgery where Greg Lake says, and a garland of Martian fire flowers for Pete Sinfield for doing the lyrics. And he said, you know what? That's about all I got from him. I never made a dime on those lyrics. I didn't get paid squat. And I don't want to be a dirty laundry guy, but it's just the truth. And then the other fun fact, you're going to love this. I'm hanging out at a college in Stockton, California in 1975. And there's an eclipse, a lunar eclipse, and we're all going to go out and watch it on the lawn and everything. The guy's got a telescope. I'm parked right next to everybody in my Volkswagen bus. And I said, you know what? We need a soundtrack. And I opened up the big door of the bus, and I put on Dark Side of the Moon, and I cranked it. And you know how anything about 8-tracks, you can't go to the tune that you want. And I wanted to get to Brain Damage, but it took a while to get to it. So by the time it got to it, we were sitting at the telescope, and Roger's going, the lunatic is on the grass. And we're sitting on the grass looking at an eclipse, stoned, and we're laughing, and they're laughing. And it was just surreal. And you know, an experience like that is never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And those are my 3 fun facts.
Well, you were 0 for 3, I'm afraid, Ryan, but good effort.
They were fun stories. More,
anecdotes.
Rand lived this.
Well, they're facts because they happened. That's what I'm saying.
Rand helped ride the elevator with David Gilmour. That was our fun fact.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's another thing too. Since you brought that up, I asked Nick Mason on the elevator. I watched that Pompeii movie, Nick. Did you mean to drop that stick in one of these days? And he looked at me like I was stepping on his foot.
Yeah, well, I'd imagine he would.
He said, he had that mustache, you know, like that really cool mustache.
Are you intentionally a bad drummer, Nick? You know?
He goes, yeah, I did.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure for you guys to join us. I hope we did these albums a little justice tonight, and we'll be back next week doing something here on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. We hope that we see you all. Hey, if you're in the Middletown area this week, we have a big record store day after party here in Middletown at the Quinn's Pins Bowling Alley, where we have a stage, and we have Grateful Ears doing 3 hours of the best of the Grateful Dead, along with Tiger Man, who is a New Jersey-based band that does originals in the jam band style, funk music style. Very interesting, along with a good friend of mine, Alex Cates. So he'll be playing some plugged acoustic, and we'll have the Scott Doty Ordeal. That's all free. We've got a bunch of giveaways from Blazy Susan and Easy Wider and OCB and a lot of the glass companies, and some vendors will be there. So, and please come out to Record Store Day if you're local. So, shameless plug for me at Rock Fantasy, and we'll see you all next time on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel.
Good luck with it, Steve. Cheers.